Today, I want to talk to you guys about a little known fact. A little known fact that is so crazy that even I can admit that it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but I can assure you that it's not. Now, as you guys know, we discuss a wide variety of topics here on this channel, and we often dive into true crime stories. Right now, for example, I am covering the case of Austin Metcalf, a white teenage athlete that was killed by a black teenage athlete in Frisco, Texas. Now, immediately after this murder took place, before Austin's body even grew cold, before we even knew the details of this story, Austin's father was already immediately on the news, publicly forgiving his son's killer, while also denouncing racism and trying to tell people, hey, this case has nothing to do with race. This case has nothing to do with politics. Now, if you're someone like me who watches these stories and covers these kinds of stories often, then chances are you have noticed a trend. Every time a young white person is brutally murdered or killed by a minority, all of a sudden, it's like clockwork. Immediately, the families of the victims always come out to forgive the killer and to denounce racism and tell people, hey, we don't want any violence or any disruptions. We forgive the killer. This is something that we see all too often. Not every time, but most of the time. But what if I told you that this was not happening naturally? That shouldn't be a big shocker. That 15 minutes after someone's son gets killed, they're on the news forgiving the killer. Does that sound natural to you? It doesn't, because it's not natural. The responses that you see from these families of white victims who have been murdered by minority groups, they're not coming on the news on their own free will, forgiving the killers and telling people, hey, this isn't about this isn't about that. What if I told you, and I know I'm well aware this sounds wild, what if I told you that our government literally sends federal agents to victims' homes to coerce them into publicly forgiving their family member's killer? What if I told you that when a young white person is stabbed in the chest at a track meet by a minority, or when a young white person is run over in the street by a illegal immigrant, what if I told you that our government literally sends federal agents to the victim's home to talk to the parents, to talk to the family members, to threaten them, that they will be the targets of violence if they don't condemn racism, tell everyone it's not about race, and tell everyone they forgive the killer? Within hours of a tragedy like what happened to Austin happening, federal agents are already knocking on parents' doors, basically telling them, hey, we need you to say this on the news. We need you to say this on the news. If you don't, there's going to be riots. There's going to be violence. There's going to be this. There's going to be that. So in other words, when someone, at least when a white parent tragically loses a child to some senseless, violent act, in the moments where they're just trying to make sense out of everything, in the moment where they're still grieving, yet they still haven't even accepted the reality of what happened to their kid, government agents are already sitting in their home telling them that, hey, you got to say this, you got to say that. If you say this, you're going to be a target. If you say this, there's going to be a race riot. You got to do this, you got to respond this way. It's absolutely disgusting. It is sick when you think about it. And it sounds like something that is not real. I can admit that. It sounds like something that is not real. And some of you watching this video right now are probably like, what? This is fake. This is fake news. Well, what if I told you that not only is everything I said in this video true, but our government actually has an entire agency dedicated to this? This is not a hidden secret. This is something that is right out there in the open, but most people don't realize it. And after this Austin Metcalf story, I saw all of these people online saying, how could the father forgive the killer? Or why would the father say this? Why would the father say that? Because the father has already been sitting down having meetings with this agency that's coercing him to say these things. He didn't come out on his own free will 20 minutes after his son got murdered and say, hey, I forgive this guy. Guys, please don't make this about politics and race. No, he was talked into doing that by a government agency who is dedicated to literally this, dedicated to literally talking to white families after their kids or loved ones are murdered by minority groups and talking them into not getting upset and don't upset people, just act like it's all okay, forgive them. But let's go ahead and read up on this government agency, shall we? Now, this government agency that I'm speaking of is called the CRS, Community Relation Services. And just so you guys know that I'm not getting this information from any sketchy sources, we're going to refer to the government website itself and get the info directly from them, just in case any of you at home are still in denial about this. For over 60 years, CRS has been America's peacemaker. CRS responds to communities experiencing conflict and violence to help restore peaceful relations. Guided by federal laws establishing jurisdictions, CRS assists communities through facilitated dialogue, mediation, training, and consultation to overcome differences and build the skills needed to prevent future disputes. All CRS services are confidential and provided free of charge to the communities that voluntarily request or accept CRS's assistance. CRS is not an investigatory or prosecutorial agency and has no law enforcement authority. CRS works with all parties to develop solutions to conflict and serves as a neutral, impartial party. Now let's find out a little bit more about this agency over on Wikipedia. The Community Relations Service, CRS, is part of the United States Department of Justice. The office is intended to act as a peacemaker for community conflicts and tensions arising from differences of race, color, national origin, gender identity, sexual orientation, religion, and disability. It was created by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and its mission was broadened by the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Originally under the Department of Commerce, it was moved to the Department of Justice by the order of President Johnson. It is the only federal agency dedicated to assist state and local units of government, private and public organizations, and community groups with preventing and resolving racial and ethnic tensions, incidents, and civil disorders, and in restoring racial stability and harmony by employing these tactics. So, here we have definitive proof that this is a real thing that is going on, that has been going on since the 1960s. A massive operation happening behind the scenes, but also right in front of our faces, to silence families after their loved ones are killed just because their loved ones, the victim, happens to be white and the murderer, the killer, happens to be of a different race, a different color, religion, ethnicity, whatever you want to call it. So this is the harsh and sad reality of the world, of the society, of the country that we're living in. This is not just happening in the U.S. There's agencies for this over in the U.K. as well. But what I want you all to understand is when you see one of these tragic stories and you see the parents on the news acting like they're full of forgiveness and they're telling people don't be upset and they're saying these things, understand that it's not something that is naturally happening. All of this is happening because of this government agency trying to tamper with the stories, trying to basically talk families into not saying what's really on their mind. I mean, they even let it be known. It's not a hidden secret. Like I keep saying, this is something that has been happening for decades right out in the open. And they even say that they assist communities through facilitated dialogue, meaning that this government agency feels like they have the power to facilitate and to mediate and to decide what people are going to say. Oh, you want to say this because you have raw emotions about your son being murdered? You can't say that. We need you to say this pre-approved message instead. Now, like I said, I don't know if these families are bribed with money, but I do know that they're often threatened. They're threatened that, oh, you don't want something bad to happen to you. Do you want people to show up at your house and hurt you? Do you want something to happen to your other kid? They're threatened that bad things will happen to them if they simply acknowledge how horrible it is that their kid was killed by this person or that person. And as far as I know, I don't think that this is something that happens as widespread when the shoe is on the other foot and it's the other way around. Because when it's the other way around, we see the riots, we see the calls for violence on the news, we see cities burning down. So this agency isn't invested in mediating and facilitating when a white person happens to kill a minority. No, the government itself throws fire and they throw fuel on the flames when something like that happens. But when it's the other way around, and 9 times out of 10, it's the other way around. 9 times out of 10, if you look at the statistics, white people are way more likely to get killed by some other group of people as opposed to white people killing another group of people. So more often than not, when these cases happen, this government agency steps in and they try to shut the conversation down. And they try to basically use the victims' families as tools to spread anti-white propaganda, to basically try to talk people and to convince people that they shouldn't be upset or they shouldn't look at the case this way or they shouldn't look at the story that way. And if we lived in a world where this agency was doing this for everyone, maybe it wouldn't be as big of an issue. I still think it's an issue regardless, but if they showed the same energy for everyone, it would be different, but it's not. If you're a certain color or a certain race and your family member gets killed by a white person, hey, they're going to throw freaking fuel on the fire. They're going to bond people out of jail who are rioting, burning businesses down. They're going to provide money to the protesters to go out and protest all day, and get paid doing so. But when a white person is tragically killed, we're all supposed to shut up. We're all supposed to be silent. If you acknowledge it, if you acknowledge that it's wrong, you're racist. And meanwhile, the grieving families are being harassed by our government, harassed into saying what our government wants to say and promoting the narrative that our government wants to promote. So, I mean, it's a very frustrating thing, but it's something that it's like I said, it's existed for decades. It's been right out here in the open. We've all seen the trends. We've all seen the families and kind of scratched our heads at why they would respond to these horrific tragedies this way, and now you maybe have a better understanding of why. Because most people don't know that this government agency even exists. Because, hey, if you don't have a white kid that was murdered by a minority, then you probably had no interactions with this agency. But if you're the family of a white kid that has been murdered, then this agency has definitely reached out to you in one way or the other. So I just wanted to put out this quick video letting people know that this exists, that this is a thing. And maybe in future videos, we'll go over it more. We'll talk about certain cases where this government agency got involved and we'll dive a little deeper. But for now, it's important to just spread awareness because so many people are not aware. So if you're here, share this video. Let people know that this government agency exists. Drop a comment below. Hit that like button. If you would like to support the channel even further, you could drop a Cash App or send a super thanks. All of it is greatly appreciated. But with that being said, I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.